Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra book. It's quite witty and insightful. We were on the section titled On the Pitying. So let's see what shenanigans Nietzsche gets us into today. Let's begin. Bismillah. My friends, a Gaib was related to your friend. Look at Zarathustra. Does he not walk among us as if we were animals? Does he not walk among us as if we were animals? That's a kind of interesting way to think about it. How does the shepherd walk amongst the sheep, guiding, prodding, checking? It's sort of observing. But it were better said, he who has knowledge walks among men as among animals. To him who has knowledge, man himself is the animal with red cheeks. How did this come about? Is it not because man has had to be ashamed too often? Man being having to be ashamed too often. Oh, my friends, thus speaks he who has knowledge. Shame, shame, shame. That is the history of man, and that is why he who is noble bids himself not to shame. Shame he imposes on himself before all who suffer. Shame is something lacking now. Lewdness, like modesty used to be something classy, and like immodesty is something shameful and despicable. Like women twerking on police cars, right? Like you should feel ashamed of yourself. But people being like, don't judge me. Twerking, and you're like, verily, I do not like them, the merciful who feel blessed in their pity. They are lacking too much in shame. If I must pity, at least I do not want it known. And if I do pity, it is preferably from a distance. So to pity from a distance, I should also like to shroud my face and flee before I am recognized. And thus I bid you do, my friends. Would that my destiny led those like you, who do not suffer or cross my way, and those whom I may share hope and meal a honey. Verily I may have done this and that for sufferers, but always I seem to have done better when I learned to feel better joys. I seemed to have done better when I learned to feel better joys. Learning to feel better joys. As long as there have been men, man has felt too little joy. That alone, my brothers, is our original sin. So, our original sin being that we have felt too little joy reminds me of how we can find contentment in little things in life, and how that can actually help you to not always want to compete with the Joneses, and that you sort of become more minimalistic and not desiring all that vanity, therefore cutting yourself free of the suffering of always endlessly seeking more and more. And learning better to feel joy, we learn best not to hurt others, or to plan hurts for them. Therefore I wash my hand when it has helped the sufferer. Therefore I wipe even my soul, having seen the sufferer suffer. I was ashamed for the sake of his shame. Feeling shame for the sake of their shame. Interesting. And when I helped him, I transgressed grievously against his pride. So that's something that I have heard before, that some people, they need help, but when you help them, they actually get hurt in their pride. They don't want to be embarrassed with help. Sounds strange, doesn't it? Great indebtedness does not make men grateful, but vengeful. And if a little charity is not forgotten, it turns into a gnawing worm. Be reserved in accepting. Distinguish by accepting. Thus I advise those who have nothing to give. But I am a giver of gifts. I like to give, as a friend to friends. Stranger, however, and the poor may themselves pluck the fruit from my tree. That will cause them less shame. So, they may pluck the fruit themselves. So instead of you plucking it and giving them the fruit, they have to kind of work for it. And then they don't see it as much of a biggest charity, like embarrassing. Letting them participate in their charity. Kind of letting them feel less useless, less lazy, maybe. But beggars should be abolished entirely. This reminds me of when we were reading Riyadh Salihin Volume 1, where it's like the upper hand is better than the bottom hand. And that it was kind of pushing us as Muslims to not be beggars. It's better for you to go gather wood and sell it than to be a beggar. A habitual beggar. Verily, it is annoying to give to them, and it is annoying not to give to them. That's funny. And also sinners and bad consciences. Believe me, my friends, the bite of conscience teaches men to bite. The bite of consciousness teaches men to bite. That's interesting. Worst of all, however, are petty thoughts. Verily, even evil deeds are better than petty thoughts. To be sure, you say, the pleasure in a lot of petty nastiness saves us from many a big evil deed. But here one should not wish to save. An evil deed is like a boil. It itches and irritates and breaks open, and it speaks honestly. Behold, I am a disease. Thus speaks the evil deed, that it is honesty. Yes, I would agree that an evil deed is a disease. And it really does speak for itself. But a petty thought is like a fungus. It creeps and stoops and does not want to be anywhere, till the whole body is rotten and withered with the little fungi. But to him who is possessed by the devil I whisper this word: better for you to rear up your devil. Even for you there is still a way to greatness. Rear up your devil. That's interesting. To rear up, it's like to rein in, because when you rear up a horse or you pull in the reins, they kind of go back and they go on their hinds, or like either way you're tightening it, so you're showing control. You're not letting it run rampant. You're not on the back of it like and bouncing around and everything, about to fall off your horse, but you're like, you got some direction going on. My brother's one knows a little too much about everybody, and we can even see through some men, and yet we can by no means pass through them. That is clever. We can see through some men, but we can't pass through them. See, Nietzsche is clever, man. Like, I see you, I see what you're up to, but you can't pass through them. Smart. It is difficult to live with people because it is so difficult to be silent. That's a good point. Roommates, right? Living with your in-laws. And not against him who is repugnant to us are we most unfair, but against him who is no concern of ours. But if you have a suffering friend, be a resting place for his suffering, but a hard bed, as it were, a field cot, thus you will profit him best. I agree with that. Like, you want to help your suffering friend, but don't let them be too comfortable, because they don't want to fly the nest, you know? They're like, oh, just stay here. Like, if someone's down on their luck and you make them too comfortable, you're like, okay, are you going to get a job? Like, you're going to start figuring out your problems. But they're like, oh, so comfortable here. I'm so taken care of. I can just sit here. They sort of lose their motivation and drive, and they start to sloth around, become idle. And if a friend does you evil, then say, I forgive you what you did to me. but that you have done it to yourself. How could I forgive that? Thus speaks all great love. It overcomes even forgiveness and pity. Or not to hold onto one's heart, for if one lets it go, one soon loses control of the head too. So, control your heart, because you'll lose your mind. Alas, where in the world has there been more folly than among the pitying? And what in the world has caused more suffering than the folly of the pitying? Woe to all who love without having a height that is above their pity. Thus spoke the devil to me once. God too has his hell. No, that is his love of man. That's witty, obviously, but we wouldn't believe that as Muslims. But rhetorically, if you look at it from the Christian perspective, how humans are constantly letting God down because they're like repugnant sinners, right, doing evil, and that we're forgiven and keeps giving us a chance to repent. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't love us, how do you put it, like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. If you have mercy on something, you care about something grander than yourself, truth, right? And when it came to the flood, like flooding evil, allowing good, sending messengers to us so that we can be redeemed, that shows a sort of love. But I don't think as Muslims we can say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us, because Allah is free of need. We are entirely dependent on Him. We have to have hope, love, and fear. And whatever we do, it's to hurt our own selves. It doesn't hurt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how we would look at it. So, even though this is clever, we wouldn't contend with that as Muslims. You look at actually what we're supposed to believe, from what I've learned thus far. And most recently I heard him say this: God is dead, God died of his pity for man. Okay, so, very famous part right here. To die of pity, to always be let down. Thus be warned of pity, from there a heaven cloud will yet come to man. Verily I understand with their signs. But mark this too, all great love is even above all its pity, for it still wants to create the beloved. Myself I sacrifice to my love, and my neighbor as myself. Thus runs the speech of all creators, but all creators are hard. Thus spoke Zarathustra. Very interesting section. I like this one. I think this is very interesting because talked about shame, talked about being hard, not being a beggar, pity, how you can help someone without hurting their pride, to be a friend but not to be more of a firm mattress, a cot. Talked about how an evil deed is like a boil. An evil deed kind of speaks for itself, and it's really honest that it is evil. So a parent told us to rear up the devil, our personal devils. I really liked this one. And then walking among others as if they were animals. Very fascinating. What do you think? Let me know. Great book. Great book. It's been an absolute joy to read. If you'd like to join my blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there.